Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased. Joining me from the US, Ben Wilcox. Ben is the CTO and CISO, or some people they say Chief Information Security Officers. For ProArch, he's an expert in his domain, and I'm very thrilled to have him with me today. We're gonna talk a lot about a lot of topics, all the way from this merge between cybersecurity plus being a chief technology officer. We're going to talk, of course, about DevSecOps. We're going to talk about AI adoption and risk. We're going to talk also about architecture, and Ben's view on this, and maybe a few topics here and there and everything in between. So without further ado, first of all, Ben, thank you very much for making it. I really appreciate your time today with me. So, traditional question I always ask my guests: tell us a little more about you, your background, your journey, and then we can start the discussion from there. So, the floor is yours.
Appreciate it, Mehmet. Thank you so much for having me on. A little bit about my background. I've been working with computers since the early 90s. I started as a teenager, very excited in the early internet days. I built a business as a teenager, ran it for probably about 10 years or so, and then moved over into software development for a number of years. After that, I made the transition to the company I'm at now, which I've been at for over 18 years. Came up through the engineering and the technical side. It's kind of funny to think about some of the things that where we're different and where we're the same, but I've been almost doing cloud technologies for almost 20 years at this point. In the mid 2010s, I got into security through consulting side of it, and really started kind of merging all of the pieces from my infrastructure development days together into security, and started seeing that there's lots of opportunities for security to improve what we're doing in both the infrastructure perspective, cloud perspective, development side of things. And that really helped me take a different kind of lens of approach. So today I'd say I am very business technology centric, and I blend my kind of decision making with security, right? And in areas where there is some conflict, because a dual role is a little bit of a conflict there, I rely upon some great staff members at our company that have more dedicated roles in one or the other to help me kind of make that judgment call of which direction to go.
Great. And thank you again, Ben, for being here with me today. I'm going to start from where you ended. It's about, the conflict. And as someone also like, I think I've been around almost, maybe a couple of years later, I came, when I started to deal with the computers and systems. And when I started my professional career, so there was always this fight. They call it dog fight sometimes between, you know, like even in a small organization, let's say between application teams and security teams, like infrastructure team and cybersecurity team. Like, even at that time, 20 years back, we used to have a separate people managing the cybersecurity for us. So this conflict, and how did you manage to get both together? It's a rare combination. And like, how did you manage to get there?
Yeah, well, I think one thing I guess that's beneficial for supporting the role is that excuse me, if I had a deep compliance obligation, right? Let's say I'm in financial services. I don't think a dual role like this would be possible. Being in the tech side of things, certainly it is more possible, right? And I guess the piece how it kind of slid in together was that we need, as technology organizations, to be able to be agile and fast with our development, but also secure. So that's kind of where the dual role kind of came into place. Been supporting it now for over a year. I can say that it is challenging at points. There is definitely some conflict in there, and I have to. Typically how I address that is I look at the business, right? What is right for the business, and is there a risk there associated with it? So, putting on the business lens really helps kind of clarify where that is. Like I said, like if I need a tiebreaker and I'm feeling indecisive, I bring in one of our security architects. I bring in, some other experts from the development side, and we, hash it out. And we figure out the best and less risky method for doing it, because there's always usually a different approach that can be done if we're at one of
Absolutely.
those crossroads.
Yeah, so I'm sure you find the common ground there, Ben. Now, for the audience, and people ask me about the show. So the name, I call it CTO because I have the belief that a chief technology officer is the person who, exactly as you mentioned, Ben, like can take the technology and see it from a business lens and translate it. And this is why I have people like who are not necessarily technical on the show. So I'm happy that I'm having this conversation with you today. Now, as a chief technology officer, like usually you're measured, from the business side on the outcomes, right? So what did the technology achieve for us? Like, and one of the main thing, especially in the era we are living in currently, is the speed, like how fast you can deliver something. Now, being a chief information security officer, and we all know, and I've worked, as practitioner in both. So we try to actually slow people down. So we say, hey, like let's see the risks there. So in your current position, how you make this balance between, you know, pushing things because we need to ship fast, but at the same time, yeah, make sure that we're not like, doing something that might expose us from risk perspective, I would say.
Yeah, I was actually having a really interesting conversation with a principal architect yesterday, and the challenge I think from the development realm is that today, right, generative AI is allowing this extreme pace of generation of features, and the code changes really rapidly and isn't always known to the developer, right? It's not like the olden days where people are going through the code super, they know line by line where a function is, or where things are done. And for example, if documentation is written on the application, that documentation is outdated, very quickly. Within a week, tons of new features are out, code's been completely changed, and now how does the security team keep up to speed on that? And that's kind of, I think, where we are a bit from an inflection point of generative AI in development. Is security has always trailed innovation, and right now our security teams, both from a coding perspective and being able to address security in a rapid manner, are not, the security isn't there yet, and the tools there. So I think we as we'll see this year great strides in this area. Move more towards agentic security type of capabilities, things that can keep up with speed of the development, and the security team is going to start being orchestrators of that. And I think that we're also going to see the development team being orchestrators of that, right? Because they're going to ideally get feedback in real time, not having to go back and try to retrofit stuff. And maybe it's agent to agent, right? So, your development agent is talking to your security agent, and saying, "Hey, here's my latest code," and the security agent says, "Well, this isn't good. Go back and fix this." And maybe we get to that state. That would be ideal, right? Where they're not having to go
Yeah.
back. But we need better security, from what I'm seeing today with some of our development sides of
I,
things.
I'm happy you mentioned this, Ben, because and you mentioned AI. Although, like, I'm gonna ask about different aspects of AI later, but um, I think a lot of people, and I'm not sure if I should say this, fortunately or unfortunately, now we have a lot of people who jump on the bandwagon, and they want to be part of this, and we see them talking about security also as well. Now, if we want to go back to the roots, right? If you want, just now put your CTO hat actually, or anyone who's building software, we always talk, even when we talk to clients, that hey, you know one of the main thing we are proud of doing is we do everything in a way which is secure by design, right?
Mhm.
So, and now I'm seeing a lot of, I would say divergence here because the agents that started to appear. Of course, I can't now not mention OpenClaw and formerly known as CloudBot and Moldbot and all this stuff. But of course, it's not the only one out there. And of course, the vibe coding, which we've seen people who, yeah, they were shipping fast, but it wasn't secure. So just, reminding people and maybe business people more than technical people, man, because I think they need to hear this from someone like you. What do we mean by secure by design? Like how that looks from, an engineering workflow perspective, not just as, you know, I call it a cliche or a marketing material.
Yeah, and that is that pause state, right? Which is going in, and when you're doing secure by design, in today's world, right, you want a paved path or a paved road, right? That gives the engineering team the parameters of which they have to operate and makes it simple from the beginning, right? This is the way that it goes. I learned early on, and when I was doing the software development side of things and doing project management, right, as we scoped a project, don't just give the engineer an open line item to figure out the best way to go forth, right? Give them two and let them pick one of those at the most. Don't leave it, because then you'll be going back and forth forever. So um, if we give pay paths and methods of, this is the best way to secure, right, and this is the infrastructure and the environment that you have to operate within, that will certainly help that quite a bit. Now, when we start getting into the development lifecycle, I do think that in your sprint you do need a secure review in there, and looking back through it, and you can turn on all of the other AI security pieces, right? Your GitHub, advanced security, or whatever it is, that platform that you're leveraging for that. And those things will look for standard things, right? Secrets that are hard coded, right? We've had lots of breaches over that in the last 3-4 years. It will look for not good code practices and some of the other things, right? But quality assurance, the QA side of things, you know, those practices still need to be done. And looking at the quality of the code, looking at, making sure that the functionalities don't, expose new risks. I do believe that we are at a point too with, this year looking at, every single app having some sort of generative AI as part of it. Red teaming, periodically, especially on model changes, is going to become important, especially if you're storing any sort of sensitive or confidential information there, right? And I think people forget how easy it is to store that stuff, right? PII, personally identifiable information, is something that if you have a large set of records in the US, right? 5,000 plus records get exposed, you're obligated, like in New York State, to disclose that and contact, and you have to let everyone know that this has happened. So PII, if you're B2C or B2B, right, this stuff starts adding up, and you really do need to start taking concerns around your data, how you're protecting it, how you're encrypting it, how you're sharing that information, and so forth. And it's a combination of both tools, but people and processes.
Right. Now, we know for fact, man, that we, like any, the way that technology evolved is that we, of course, we're going to do mistakes down the road, which is normal. And this is why we have, the guardrail that we started to use. And this is not only from security perspective. We've seen it like also when people started, for example, to migrate to cloud, and a whole new thing, which evolved with that, like the DevOps and the practices of, you know, how we can enhance the software, life cycle when we move to the cloud. Although, like, practically we were doing it in different ways back in the days. Now, also, we have DevSecOps, which is like development security operations, right? So, um, it looks great, right? but is it succeeding on practice? Like, are really, you know, organizations utilizing it in the proper way? Like, are they really embedding into their pipeline CI/CD without slowing their teams? Like, what's going wrong there, and how we can enhance it?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think, room for enhancement there. I don't see a lot of successful DevSecOps in organizations. Even in presentations, I've done a few on DevSecOps, and frankly, the maturity isn't there. Maybe in some very larger, if you talk about the F500, maybe it's much more successful, but trickling down, right? It's especially about features, speed today, getting it out the door. The ability, if we think about too where teams are, I just haven't seen security become a focal point in development, and the skills needed to assess the risk side of things being done from a personnel perspective. That's not something that's there. I do see, like, for example, in security, people moving towards more programmatic, having those skills from a program perspective, and being able to start at least understanding the developer's world a bit more. But there's still definitely a big lack in that space, and I think there's lots of room for improvement. As DevSecOps, um, very few people can do it at speed, right? And do it consistently. There's always like a roadblock there, and I think the less friction is obviously the goal that we wanted to get to, but the problem is that some of the tools I think that we still have there are either not configured well, or they're just not very good at it, right? And so they stand up the roadblocks rather than getting it early. It's right at the end, forcing the developer to get right back. Right now we're back at a stage of fixing 2 weeks after the feature is supposed to be due, and no one likes that, right? If you're being measured on how quickly you get things done and how good your feature is, right? Being
Right.
late all the time doesn't give you a good KPI to follow.
Yeah, and I think there is the rush also, like to ship as fast as possible. And here, where I want to ask you, Ben, from what you're seeing in the market, of course, we know for a fact that AI adoption is top of mind, even on the board level. Everyone might be asking in their companies, "Hey guys, what are we doing with this AI thing?" Right? Um, so, are you seeing people or organizations currently just trying to build AI into whatever product they have, or are they trying to find a way to just, again, say like, yeah, we have adopted some AI here, we did this, we did that, and now we're fine. So what's the difference really between using an AI tool? Like, we have seen, like, I've seen like someone the other day saying, hey, like, yeah, we adopted AI and we gave ChatGPT access to everyone. And you talk to someone else and telling you like, hey, no, we're building actually AI into our products. Like, we're trying to enhance, things using AI. So what leaders miss here exactly, Ben? Like, what are you
Yeah.
seeing in the marketplace?
Yeah, those are definitely two different buckets. I would call the Copilot or ChatGPT side, right? It's AI for personal productivity. The other bucket that you're describing, building it into the apps, is AI for enterprise, or building those enterprise types of apps. Different customers are in different stages on that. We see organizations that it's often starting out on that personal productivity side, right? It's hard to envision how things can change sometimes if you don't have access to those tools. So change adoption is a very big thing when it comes to personal use of AI, like the copilots. When moving into like the enterprise app space, you got a whole different realm of things. You got things that are just kind of bolt-ons, and hey, we've decided to enable queries from instead of going to the user interface, you just type in what you want, and maybe you get the answer that you want. Other ones are completely redesigned, rethought, right? They have different data sets on there, and they're actually building more. It's not just about getting a response. It's about, hey, maybe I can do something else with this, right? And manipulate it and create a report or whatever it is, right? So moving towards those ability to create something through tools on that side. So we see a gamut on there. But I think that this year is the year that when we look at apps, whether, I'm not certain I believe that SaaS is necessarily dead, but, SaaS products will have AI components. And I don't like people talk about this thing called shadow AI, right? You don't know what
Yeah,
AI is being used in your organization. Well, this year, just assume that every single app that anyone is using is going to have some sort of AI in it. I think that's safe to say, right? There's
yeah,
not really going to be a tool like out there that, doesn't have AI in it. That's, so
right.
they're going to
Uh,
build it
uh,
in.
there, there is no escape from that, and just this debate for the SaaS, and I think maybe I mentioned a couple of times in my recent discussions, and I think no harm of repeating my own opinion on this. And I'm telling people it's not like about SaaS is dead, is SaaS going to continue or not. It's about the going back to basics. And this is why when, for example, I ask you like secure by design, and always I go and ask people like, even if you today you are able to, let's say, just people are talking about the CRM, they take it as the simple example, and they say like we vibe coded a CRM system. Fine, good for you. Is it secure, right? Like
No.
how how are you how are you going to maintain it? Like who's gonna be the product manager for this in-house built CRM, right? And this is why, yeah, people might become creative, and this is where there will be a collaboration with the SaaS vendors actually. And I read a very great article. I'm sorry because I'm not remembering the author, but I reposted his article on my LinkedIn, and he talks about SaaS is not dead, but probably the outcome based ROI would be like more reasonable than just the seed based licensing and these kinds of stuff. So now, still talking here about using AI and all agentic AIs in coding. And as someone who did this for a long time, man, I had a guest maybe 1 year and a half, and we discussed this about the code that is generated by these AI tools. Now I know like things changed way, 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 way fast and a lot of better. But as a CTO, like if you, I want you to put your CTO hat, plus maybe you can borrow the governance risk hat also as well. In practice, the code generated here, like is it an IP code? Like, let's say a client, you deal with ban is trying to do something, maybe an idea which is, I'm not saying in completely innovative, maybe they are enhancing certain product in the market, and let's say they utilize Gen AI to write the code. So, is there a IP here? Is there intellectual property here that can be protected? uh, how safe is the code that is coming out in your opinion nowadays? Like how safe is it to use it? I'm not against or with, but I'm not sure how much also hype around the job of software engineers. And I want to hear your opinion about this, because every single CEO of these AI companies, they're saying like OpenAI, they say like actually GPT helped with the 5.3 codex. Anthropic, they're saying the same thing about Claude, and they're coder, they don't write code a lot nowadays. Of course, like we don't know. I'm not saying I'm denying or accepting, but with all these, like where is the governance risks you see? Where is also, you know, how much trust we can put in these lines and lines, of course, because we're talking sometimes about millions, maybe.
Sure. So I think the big challenging piece here is like, let's start with the quality. The quality of the code, it creates functional, you know, features, right? So from a feature perspective, yeah, it's working great. Um, Now, if you kind of start digging in, right, there's still a lot of junk, right? You'll start seeing emojis, you'll start seeing things that aren't necessarily optimized. And if we go back to thinking about like how LLMs work, right? An LLM is going to make a decision around how it puts things out based off of, the prompt that is provided. So if you're putting in prompts that aren't really optimized and you're not being very prescriptive on the guidance that you're providing, right, the quality that you're going to get back is not going to be nearly as high as what you could potentially be getting back. So part of it's going to be around user education. I think that there's a lot to to say about like if you are a software development company or a company that is building IP, right? Your secret sauce may not be, excuse me, your secret sauce may not be the um, the product that you have. It might actually be your prompts that help you create great products or deliver that service. So I think that's kind of where your IP is going. Is it's going to be what are the prompts that allow you to be really super great on that. Now, from a security perspective, you know, I would still treat it as like, hey, this is an intern, right? Are you going to trust everything that an intern says? And has doing it right. They don't have 20 years of experience. They might have some better practices, but this is still learned code, right? Off of if the thing that it's putting in there is learned and it's junk already, then that's what you're getting out. So I would say still need to do your code reviews, look at the quality of it. Um, you know, build your MVP, but make sure that you definitely do your due diligence in there and make sure that you get your security reviewed early on.
Right. Uh, what I have experienced, and I'm not a developer by any mean. I used to write code long time ago, like just for fun, and I never been. But the thing which excites me is like for someone like myself who didn't go the route of learning new languages and all these new frameworks. Like if I have an idea, yeah, now I can go to one of these tools and I can just build a skeleton, I would say, an
Yeah,
MVP, show it to people. And it's working, by the way, which is good. Don't get me wrong. I like it sometimes, but I'm sure that I need an expert eye for the architecture because I come from infrastructure background. So I work a lot of time with infrastructure. So I know there must be some optimization over there. And I remember when I took my first programming course at the university, the first thing they told us like you can write a code in different ways, but there's a way that would be more optimized, whether it's for speed, whether it's like reusability and so on. So I'm
sure.
sure you need the expert eye. Maybe the AI will get there one day. I'm not sure, but yeah, like this is my own opinion, and this will bring me to ask you about also now in the age of AI and customers uh, around the globe, although like they didn't finish yet what we call the digital transformation and moving to the cloud, and now we have this new generation of applications, and AI is a, I'm not saying must have, but majority of the time AI is an important aspect of this, and AI has its own architecture, whether on cloud or maybe sometimes still in a hybrid environment. So here, what are you seeing changing? Because we used to talk about multi-cloud for it's for resiliency. We used to talk about like, yeah, we need to have like kind of this hybrid thing. Just again, some part of the data should stay on-prem and should not leave the data center. Now they are added a, I would say, a weird mix, because also now we have the LLM itself, we have also like the processing, And also, people, I think, stop talking about the egress charges that the cloud providers used to put on that. So now, in a world of AI development and integrations with LLM, what is in your of course there is no one single answer, like, but what a ultimate design would look like from architecture perspective?
Yeah, I think what we see more customers leaning towards is trying to contain the all those risks and keeping them in one cloud this time. So where possible, right? Whether it's, we're a big Microsoft shop, right? In Azure, the idea is that, your Foundry tool, right, hosts all the models, right? It's a platform there that, doesn't matter if you're an OpenAI, Anthropic, whatever, right? Go pick your model that you want. It stays within that ecosphere. You don't have the egress. You don't have concerns about privacy where it's going. And we see more orgs wanting to at least, feel like they have more control around where it's going, um, and leveraging the resiliency within that single cloud as the platform for it. Now, when it comes to, I guess, the development of that, right, we're seeing people wanting to do new ground up builds for AI, and leveraging it from a well architected framework, because the things that you described, right, of multi-cloud, complexities around that, some orgs still want to do that stuff. But at the end of the day, they want everything in a secure footprint as much as possible, because there's just so many focal points of security risks when you start looking at enterprise AI and, building it right. You still have your traditional risks of infrastructure. You still have your risks of, what you're doing from a security code perspective in your APIs. You still then also are now adding on your LLMs, right? And what could happen from a model poisoning perspective there. And then you're also adding on additional things from a, user interactive perspective, right? Or start adding on agent capabilities, right? Now this agent can go out to the internet. You have a whole other set of risks. So you have all these egress ingress points. You have all of these other areas that could potentially add security risks to your business. Having them in one single spot makes it way easier to contain than trying to deal with a multi-cloud type of situation.
Right. Now I gotta, you know, I can't put my comments here because you are the expert, because like, things are moving really fast, Ben. And in some countries, they're focusing a lot on data sovereignty, right? So they want these LLMs and the processing of the data to be within the country. And this is where sometimes we're seeing even people buying these you know very powerful chips like the GPUs, to put them on prem, and they are saying, yeah, let's put everything here. I've seen some, actually, I talked to some startups, and what they're doing is that they're offering a hybrid approach, but yeah, they're trying as much as they can when it comes to data and metadata to put it into one place, so we don't have fragmentation and latency issues and all this. But I'm seeing like it's getting more and more complex, and this is where I want to ask you, Ben, in this age, like, I think we're same generation when it comes to the technology. And for us, like, things were okay, exciting changes always used to come, right? Like from how computers actually came, how the cloud then developed, like mobile and all this stuff. And also the coding frameworks, and we passed through multiple stages. But I would say, like, there was a kind of pace that we were able to grasp what's happening, but now it's changing very fast. So if someone today, they're planning in the future to become CTOs, so what do you think the kind of skills that they should have to develop, these, I would say, skills to be relevant in fast changing, world, of course, where also AI is moving fast, We talked about security risks also as well, and they should be aware of that. So what kind of skills a modern CTO in your opinion should have?
Yeah, a modern CTO. That's a great question. How I try to keep myself relevant. I can't speak to
Yes,
everyone, but I'll just give you my example.
sure.
I attend major conferences, 2, 3 a year, and look at the landscape. And the landscape isn't necessarily just what, you know, the conference. Let's take Ignite, for example. Microsoft shared a lot of kind of where vision things are happening across them, right? And you can see where they're making investments, right? If you start looking at where the investments are going to be made, start seeing where the gaps are today, right? That they're identifying. Other pieces, right? Go out on the vendor floor, go talk to the smallest vendors out there. Those are the ones that are really interesting. Don't I think skip over the big ones, right? If you're at a security show, skip over the big vendors. Go talk to the ones that are in the back, that are doing the innovation because they see the gaps there too. And those are
Right.
the gaps that are going to be in your next generation of development that you're going to have to address. So it's going to start showing you the risks. It's going to start showing you where they're starting to see that there's opportunity. A lot of the startups, right? If they are talking to the enterprises, and they're the ones who are building an app for the enterprise, maybe at no cost or little cost. But right, you always wonder how these startups get this big name. Well, they're doing it pretty cheap to get that big name, right? And
Right.
they're trying to grab some part of the market share there. That's emerging. So you know, I would start looking at that space. So I call that eyes up, right? Looking at the next horizon of where things are. I think it's also retrospective to look at where we are in what your peers are doing at this point, right? So if you're in a certain industry, right, what's a standard there, right? Not saying you necessarily need to always push the boundaries,
Right.
but look at, could we be doing things that are, more modern, more approachable, something that would help, the business accomplish more without introducing more risk? Because in certain industries like financial sectors, they've have a great security maturity base already. But
Yes.
that security maturity base sometimes can be limiting in what they can do in regards. So, it really takes a CTO or a CIO with great foresight and the ability to kind of shift the momentum, right? If it took a long time for the financial services firms to start doing much more cloud. Now we're seeing it pretty common, right? There's not the
Right.
questions. 10 years ago, I had to fight for every single financial service firm to do anything in the cloud. Now it's, and that was justification to, the CISO, justification to the security people, justification to the developers, because there weren't skills that they necessarily had. But um, don't leave your people behind, right? As a fourth, a CTO, right? You want to make sure that you're also educating your team and making sure that they're going to be prepared to be able to deliver these things, right? Change takes a long time, right? Change is a 1 to 3 year process. So if you think
Yes.
that you want to get somewhere down the horizon, that's going to make a difference, right? Leveraging more AI, and your team's not, an AI expert. Start investing in them, start building those capabilities, start encouraging them to say yes to something more challenging to do, and start looking at that view from an organizational change. How do I really get them so excited about this change and buy into the vision that I have? Not my vision's not to make it more hard. My vision's to bring more value to the business, right? Which benefits everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And staying relevant, talking to startups is a, very good actually strategy to stay relevant, to see like what people are seeing in the marketplace that needs improvement, that the big guys are not doing it. So this is a very good strategy. Of course, attending, as you said, conferences, and I have been, honestly, from my perspective, I've been selective because I go to the ones which I think they have value, like they're not overhyped. Because also, like, sometimes we
Yeah.
we see, especially with the AI, a lot of overhype. And I'm not, and I'm the big, I'm one of the biggest defender of the AI when it comes. I'm saying it's not a bubble. It's true, but yeah, like there are like some people who are trying to overhype it. But yeah, so to know exactly what's happening, which is absolutely perfect. And to your point, Ben, which I think this is the core. What's the outcome to the business? Like how we can take the business from point A to point B using the technology. I think this is what matters at the end of the day. And call the technology whatever you want to call it. Like yeah, so you want to call it, like, it's a cloud, it's cloud. It's AI, it's
Sure.
AI. Like whatever it is. Now, as we're coming close to the end, I know we talked about AI, we talked about agents, but from what you're watching also as well, any other trends you're expecting also to emerge in maybe in this year? I will not ask you about 3 4 years from now, no one knows, of course, but I mean, it looks like now everyone talking about the agentic AI, like using agents, and now we start to see like not only agents as co-pilot, like it's as you said, like it's like
Yeah.
we crossed that. But other than this, any other areas that you personally maybe you're watching and you're expecting some breakthroughs in them?
Yeah, I think the AI governance and the visibility in there from a security perspective is going to be really big this year. I've already seen Microsoft making the investments on that side. And when I say governance, right, it's treating these agents as if they are a coworker, right? Giving them full identities, giving your security team visibility into the actions. So the the piece around LLMs, and I think everyone forgets about this, and this also goes kind of back to the maybe a new challenge in a DevSecOps that is coming out, right? Is that these LLMs have a lifespan for like the model versions of like 9 months, right? And then you get like what was it? They're just retiring, 4.40 in ChatGPT. So these are
Yeah,
not long time, right? And so if you're using these large public models, right, you now have to upgrade and change to a different model. Now, these models, right, improve, but do they improve your business outcome that you've designed your AI app for? Now, everyone has a different reason why they're doing this, right? What if I don't want a really creative, knowledgeable, you know, capability in my app? And the new model, right? They've tweaked it and they've improved that ability for it to be really creative. Now, I want a high level of accuracy, and I think the LLMs are getting more accurate. But is it in the context of how I've designed my application to use it? So we're not in the mindset of testing those types of outcomes yet. And so that is an emerging area I think that we're going to start seeing. It's not a problem that people are running into. People are just kind of ignoring it right now.
it's
But we're
very
going to see
interesting.
more challenges, I think, around, hey, I just upgraded this framework and now things are really broken in my app. So people are
Wow.
retrospectively going back on that front.
Yeah, it remind it, what you just mentioned remind me, when in the age when, I'm sure you remember this, in the late 90s and early 2000s, when people were like have to change their CPUs because the CPUs are coming faster and have better performance every literally sometimes 3 to 6 months. And
Yep.
like yeah, I remember personally, like my first PC, it was like I think it was a 486 Intel CPU, and just like in 2 months, hey, like we have the Pentium 1 at that time, and like just in 3 4 months Pentium 2. And like people are saying me like, what should we buy? And I think the LLM, to your point with the LLMs, I think, and I was talking to someone the other day to just to put some context to what you mentioned, Ben. So I was talking to a startup, and what they told me that, for example, they use from ChatGPT, if I'm not mistaken, like 4.1, because based on the benchmarks, it does well in the area where they are building
Mhm.
around. And they said this is why we didn't even went to 4.2, and we didn't even go to 5 and 5.1, and now almost 5.3. Of course, it's in the codex is there, but as ChatGPT 5.3 is not there yet, at least at the time of the recording. So this is, I think, a real challenge, and how people they're gonna keep unplugging and plugging these LLMs in their application, I think, yeah, this is an area definitely worth to watch and see the governance around it. So 100% agree with you. Well, Ben, as we almost came to the end of this episode, traditional question, a cliche question, I know, but where people can, get in touch and find out more.
Yeah, two places. So at ProArch's website, it's PROARCH.com. We have a blog there, and I'm an active contributor to the blog. Also, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Ben, BEN dash Wilcox. And I'm here in upstate New York. And, please feel free to connect from there.
Great. And again, thank you, Ben, for being here with me today. For the links, the audience, they don't have to go search manually. Everything will be in the show notes. So if you're listening on your favorite podcasting app, you'll find the links to the website and Ben's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And of course, same thing if you're watching this on YouTube. And at the end, I can't thank you enough, Ben, for this, insightful and very, knowledge rich episode. And I think we covered great topics with you today. So I hope also the audience will find them useful and beneficial. So thank you again for your time. And this is how I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you just discovered us by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed. If you did so, give us a small favor by subscribing and share it with friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep listening to the podcast and actually they recommend it to others. So thank you for doing so. You're doing fantastic. I can see this from the statistics. Again, since last year, I'm repeating this at the end of each episode. I can't have these statistics without you. So being on the top 200 Apple Podcast charts in different countries. So every 2 or 3 weeks we shift from one country to another. So this cannot happen without, of course, a great fan base like yourself. So thank you very much for this. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.